Moments ago, flashing lights tore through Montecito as Prince Harry was rushed to the hospital after a midnight clash that's left even police stunned. Tonight, we're pulling back the curtain on the explosive fight between Harry and Meghan that erupted behind royal gates, and the shocking photos the police just unveiled that have the entire world asking, how did it come to this? Why was Harry whisked away under tight security? And could this be the breaking point for a couple already pushed to the edge? Stay with us, because what we've uncovered will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. It's minutes past midnight. The city sleeps, hushed under a blanket of darkness, save for the distant hum of traffic and the occasional flicker of neon signs reflected in rain-slicked streets. And then, a burst of flashing blue lights slices through the night like a scream. Right now, as we speak, an entire world is holding its breath. Because just moments ago, in an incident no one saw coming, Prince Harry was rushed to a hospital under circumstances so turbulent, so emotionally charged, they're sending shockwaves through royal circles, media outlets, and millions of people who, whether they admit it or not, remain riveted by the saga of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Tonight, we're talking about secrets behind palace gates. We're talking about police cars roaring into private estates, flashing cameras waiting at hospital entrances, and whispers of a stormy fight between Harry and Meghan that erupted into chaos, leaving one of the world's most famous men hospitalized under mysterious conditions. I have to ask you, have you ever wondered what really happens behind royal curtains when the cameras switch off, the polite smiles fade, and the weight of crowns and expectations crashes down on two people simply trying to hold on to each other and perhaps themselves? Because that's where our story begins tonight. But this is no ordinary celebrity scandal. This isn't just gossip to be flipped past in a tabloid while you're waiting in line at the grocery store. No, what's unfolding right now has real consequences. For Harry, for Meghan, for the royal family, for the entire institution of monarchy itself, and perhaps, in ways we don't yet fully understand, for all of us who've watched this saga from afar, each of us forming our own opinions, judgments, or sympathies. So let me promise you this. If you stay with me until the end of this story, you're going to hear details that haven't yet hit the front pages. You're going to hear testimonies from those who claim they were there. You're going to see how this night might be the tipping point that changes the story of Harry and Meghan forever, and possibly the very future of the monarchy they tried to leave behind. Now, let's rewind the clock. Let's take ourselves back to earlier this evening. It started, as these things so often do, in whispers. A few frantic texts. Rumors bouncing through journalists' encrypted chat groups. Something's happening in Montecito. Harry's been taken to a hospital. There was a fight. Journalists know the drill. A cryptic message, a sudden tightening of security, the hush that falls over the usual royal informants. When royals get quiet, reporters get louder. Within 30 minutes, the first whispers turned into panicked phone calls. Cameramen were being dispatched to local hospitals. Paparazzi engines revved. Newsrooms that had been winding down for the night were suddenly back at full throttle. Because the story was breaking and it was big. At the center of it, Harry and Meghan. And the words people kept repeating. Police, fight, photos, hospital. Now, let me pause here and remind you, Prince Harry is not just another public figure. He's a man whose life has been lived in the glare of relentless lights, from the moment he took his first steps onto the steps of St. Mary's Hospital as a newborn royal baby, to the day he watched his mother's coffin drive through the streets of London while millions of eyes wept for a princess gone too soon. He's the prince who served in Afghanistan, who once grinned out of tabloid pages in Nazi costumes and Vegas hotel rooms, who fell in love with an American actress, and who, together with her, detonated one of the biggest royal controversies in modern history by stepping away from the firm. Harry's entire journey has been a battle between public duty and private pain, between the fairy tale and the reality. So when the news hits that Harry has been rushed to a hospital after a supposed violent argument with Meghan, you can almost feel the world tilt on its axis. Let me paint you the scene. Outside the gates of Harry and Meghan's sprawling Montecito estate, police vehicles idled with their lights pulsing red and blue across manicured hedges. Security teams in dark suits murmured into earpieces. A few neighbors, night owls perhaps stirred by the flashing lights, peered through their curtains. A man walking his dog paused mid-stride, phone already out, videoing the shadows moving just beyond the gates. Inside, according to sources speaking under strict anonymity, chaos had erupted. Raised voices. A crash of something heavy. Meghan, reportedly distraught. Harry, seen by one witness clutching his head as security hustled him toward an SUV. And somewhere in the middle of that chaos, camera shutters clicked. The police arrived quickly, responding to what's been described as a domestic disturbance, though officials remained tight-lipped. Minutes later, an ambulance arrived, and Harry was taken away. Midnight cloaked the moment in secrecy, but not for long, because within the hour, those photos surfaced. I want to stress something here. These images are not confirmed by official sources, but multiple outlets claim to have seen them. Some journalists, with faces pale and voices lowered, have described what's supposedly in those frames. Harry slumped in the back of the vehicle, his face partially obscured, looking shaken, possibly injured. Meghan's face streaked with tears, one hand raised as though pleading with someone out of frame. The police have confirmed their presence at the Montecito estate. They've acknowledged a call was made. But so far, they've refused to comment on any photos or on Harry's medical condition. Yet, the story is exploding. And here's why it matters. For years, Harry and Meghan have spoken of mental health, of emotional trauma, of the suffocating pressure that comes with royal life and media intrusion. They fought for privacy and been accused of hypocrisy. They've inspired some, infuriated others. And tonight, that entire narrative has been thrown into turmoil. Was this simply a private argument blown out of proportion? Or was it something more? A final breaking point in a marriage battered by stress, fame, and endless criticism? Or is this all a grotesque media spectacle spinning half-truths into headlines, regardless of the human beings caught in the middle? That's what we're here to find out. In the coming minutes, we're going to dig into the events of this dramatic night. We'll retrace the timeline. We'll hear from alleged eyewitnesses and insiders. We'll examine the fallout for Harry and Meghan. Not just in terms of their relationship, but for the royal family and for the institution they once tried to distance themselves from. Because whatever happened tonight, it's bigger than one couple. It's about the collision of private lives and public fascination. It's about the struggle between human frailty and royal image. It's about how even princes can bleed, and how the world can't look away. So let me ask you one more question. If you were Harry or Meghan tonight, knowing the world was watching, cameras poised to dissect your every misstep, how would you feel? What would you do? Would you try to hide the truth, or finally let it spill? We often think of royalty as something distant, wrapped in velvet curtains and centuries-old tradition, an echo of a time when kings and queens ruled by divine right. But the truth is that royals bleed, grieve, fight, and sometimes fracture under the same weight as any couple battling private demons. The cameras might retreat behind palace walls, but the stress lingers. The expectations don't vanish simply because a man renounces his royal duties. For Harry, the past few years have been a relentless tug-of-war between the promise of a quieter life and the magnetic pull of the world's curiosity. And Meghan, for all the talk of fairy tales, has found herself cast in a drama where she's either villain or victim, depending on the day's headlines. So when news breaks that police have entered their home and Harry has ended up in a hospital bed, it's not merely a personal tragedy. It's a story that ignites conversations about power, privacy, and whether fame is a gilded cage that inevitably shatters even the strongest of loves. Consider how swiftly this entire narrative has escalated. One moment, the Sussexes are seen smiling on camera, promoting charitable causes, or launching new projects. The next, rumors swirl about screaming matches, injuries, and security staff shielding cameras from prying eyes. It's the dual reality they live every single day, image versus intimacy, public persona versus private pain. Earlier tonight, a senior royal correspondent said, "I've covered this couple for years, and even I've never seen the palace this rattled." That's significant, because for all the palace's measured responses and official statements about privacy, moments like these test the carefully guarded machinery of royal PR. When police show up at a royal residence, that's not business as usual. But there's another dimension we can't ignore, the human cost. Somewhere tonight, Harry's lying in a hospital bed, perhaps with a nurse adjusting it for, perhaps staring at a ceiling while his mind reels. Meghan may be sitting by his side, or pacing a waiting room, eyes red from crying, phone buzzing with messages they're too exhausted to answer. We don't know yet if he's injured physically or simply overwhelmed emotionally. But whichever it is, it's real. It's raw. And behind the cameras, behind the headlines, there are families on both sides of the Atlantic worrying about their son, brother, husband. There's a monarchy calculating how to handle a fresh scandal. And there's a public, divided and hungry for answers, demanding to know what really went down. As the story grows, some voices online are quick to assign blame. Some insist this is Meghan's fault, citing every prior rumor about tension or controlling behavior. Others accuse the press of hounding Harry into a mental health crisis. Still others believe it's none of our business at all, that this is a private matter that should never have reached our ears. And yet it has. Because police lights flashed outside the gates. Because neighbors heard yelling. Because Harry left in an ambulance. Because leaked photos allegedly show pain and fear written across royal faces. And because the Sussexes are not just any couple, they're Harry and Meghan, a pair whose every triumph and every wound becomes a public spectacle. Perhaps that's the saddest part of this entire story. At the end of the day, there are two people who fell in love. Two people who believed they could carve a new path for themselves outside the shadow of centuries of monarchy. And two people now caught in the storm of a single night that may change everything. I want you to imagine for a moment how alone Harry might feel tonight. How the walls close in when your private breakdown becomes a trending hashtag. How the very institutions meant to protect you, both the royal family and the media, sometimes become the forces that crush you. We often talk about Harry as a prince, but tonight he's also a husband, a father, a man who might be struggling to keep himself together under crushing expectations. Whether you love or loathe Harry and Meghan, there's a human story beneath the spectacle. And that human story is what we're about to explore in detail. This is not the story of an argument. This is the story of a couple carrying the weight of kingdoms past, present, and future, and stumbling under that weight in the middle of a California night. And if you're wondering why this matters, the answer is simple. Because it reminds us that no matter how high the walls, no matter how deep the bank accounts, pain still finds its way in. And the truth always finds a crack through which it leaks. Tonight, that crack is wide open. So I'm inviting you to stay with me as we peel back each layer of this night's events. We'll examine the timeline, hear from those who claim to know what really happened, and try to understand not just the facts, but the emotions, the consequences, and the hidden tensions that have been simmering for years. Because this is more than a royal scandal. This is a moment that may define the next chapter of Harry and Meghan's story, and the future of an institution that has weathered centuries of storms. So settle in. Listen closely, because the clock has struck midnight, and nothing will ever be the same again. From the outside, Harry and Meghan's story has always felt like a modern fairy tale, and yet, lurking beneath its glittering surface, it has also been a story of collision. Collision between tradition and modernity, duty and desire, public image and private suffering. Tonight's dramatic events didn't spring from nowhere. They're the latest chapter in a saga shaped by years of tension, heartbreak, hope, and the constant roar of public opinion. To understand why Harry lying in a hospital bed sends tremors through the royal institution and ripples across oceans, we need to rewind this story. We need to examine how Harry, once a grinning prince in military uniform, and Meghan, a California-born actress, ended up standing together on the edge of a royal precipice. Let's go back to a simpler time. It's the summer of 2016. Harry, then the world's most eligible bachelor, is living a life split between royal duties, military charity work, and fleeting romances captured by the paparazzi. He's known for his cheeky grin and sometimes reckless behavior. But beneath the surface, close friends say Harry is wrestling with deep-seated wounds. The loss of his mother, Princess Diana, still casts a long shadow, haunting him with memories of camera flashes exploding in dark tunnels and strangers dissecting his grief in newspapers. Then comes Meghan Markle. An actress best known for her role on Suits, Meghan is intelligent, articulate, and driven. She's biracial, American, divorced, a combination that sets off waves of both fascination and disapproval within certain royal circles and segments of the British public. But to Harry, she's a revelation. Here's someone outside the royal bubble who understands the media's glare yet carries herself with confidence and purpose. Their connection is instant. Harry has said in interviews that he knew Meghan was the one the very first time they met. For months, they keep their relationship hidden, sneaking around London, communicating through friends and secret phone calls. But the press catches wind of the romance. By October 2016, Meghan's name is splashed across British tabloids, accompanied by racial undertones and veiled threats to her safety. Harry, deeply protective, issues a rare public statement condemning the racist abuse and harassment Meghan has suffered. It's the first sign that he's willing to defy palace convention to defend her. For many observers, that statement marks the beginning of Harry's divergence from royal protocol, a path that would eventually lead them both to tonight's chaos in Montecito. The couple's engagement in 2017 sparks a media frenzy. The British public is divided. Many hail Meghan as a breath of fresh air, a modern woman who might inject new life into the monarchy. Others bristle at her American background, her outspokenness, and the fact that she doesn't fit the traditional mold of a royal bride. The tabloids circle like sharks, dissecting every facial expression, every fashion choice, every hint of supposed drama. Still, on May 19, 2018, Harry and Meghan marry in St. George's Chapel at Windsor Castle in a ceremony watched by millions around the world. It's a day of extraordinary pageantry, but also of cultural symbolism. Gospel music fills the chapel. A Black American bishop delivers a sermon about love and social justice that leaves royal traditionalists stiffly shifting in their seats. For a moment, it seems like the monarchy is transforming before our eyes. But behind palace walls, tensions brew. Reports begin surfacing of friction between Meghan and palace staff. Stories emerge about Meghan making Kate cry, about demanding behavior, about rifts between the brothers who once seemed inseparable. The phrase, Duchess difficult, appears in the tabloids. Whether these stories are entirely true, partially exaggerated, or maliciously planted remains a matter of fierce debate to this day. One thing is undeniable. Harry and Meghan are drowning under relentless media scrutiny. The British press becomes obsessed with dissecting Meghan's every move. She's praised for her fashion one day, vilified the next for touching her baby bump too often, wearing dark nail polish, or breaking some minor royal protocol. Harry, haunted by memories of how the media chased his mother to her death, grows increasingly protective and increasingly angry. In a move that shocks the world, Harry and Meghan announce in January 2020 that they are stepping back as senior royals. They intend to carve out a progressive new role within the royal family while seeking financial independence. The news hits the royal family like a thunderclap. Newspapers dub it Megxit. The Queen calls emergency meetings at Sandringham. William and Harry reportedly barely speak. Long-negotiated agreements are hashed out behind closed doors, determining what titles Harry and Meghan will keep, what security arrangements they'll have, and how they'll repay taxpayer money spent on Frogmore Cottage. In March 2020, Harry and Meghan officially stepped down. They moved to California. Initially, there's talk of quiet charity work and a private life. But that peace proved short-lived. In March 2021, Harry and Meghan sit down with Oprah Winfrey for a primetime interview that sends shockwaves around the world. Meghan reveals she was suicidal during her time in the royal family. She speaks of conversations within the family about how dark her baby's skin might be. Harry admits his relationship with his father and brother is strained. It's a nuclear bomb dropped into the center of royal image management. The royal family issues a terse statement saying recollections may vary, but the damage is done. Public opinion splinters further. Some hail Meghan as courageous for speaking out. Others accuse her of betraying the monarchy. Since then, Harry and Meghan have continued forging their own path. They've signed lucrative deals with Netflix and Spotify. They've launched Archwell, their foundation focused on mental health and social issues. Harry has published his memoir, Spare, laying bare personal grievances and painful family secrets, including physical confrontations with his brother, William. Yet even as they build a new life in California, the ghosts of the past keep finding them. Paparazzi drones hover over their Montecito estate. Tabloid stories continue to allege everything from marital tension to financial struggles. And always, there's that question. Are Harry and Meghan happy? Or has the weight of public scrutiny and internal royal warfare fractured them beyond repair? Tonight's events seem to bring that question screaming back into the spotlight. Because for all the accusations that Harry and Meghan seek publicity, few can believe they would orchestrate an incident that lands Harry in a hospital. There's also a more profound question gnawing at the edges of this story. How does a couple, any couple, survive this level of global attention, this constant speculation, this tidal wave of public judgment? For Harry, the stakes are particularly high. He's been trying for decades to escape the trauma of a childhood spent under the harsh lights of cameras, to build a different life for himself and his family. Yet no matter how far he runs, the headlines keep catching up. It's important to understand that Harry's distrust of the media is rooted in searing personal pain. The endless flashing bulbs that blinded him as a child, the clicks of cameras that chased his mother to her death in Paris. For him, Every new scandal dredged up by the press feels like history repeating itself. And Meghan has become part of that storm, absorbing vitriol that often blends racism and misogyny into a toxic cocktail. In private interviews, Harry has described feeling trapped in royal life. Meghan has spoken of surviving, not living. And yet they've also talked about their love story as a powerful bond that carried them through the worst times. Tonight, that bond appears to have cracked under unimaginable strain. The questions we're left asking are the same ones that have haunted their story for years. How much pressure can love withstand? How deeply can trauma carve into a person's soul before even the strongest relationships begin to buckle? It's no exaggeration to say that Harry and Meghan have become symbols of a larger cultural conversation about race, mental health, freedom, and the cost of fame. Supporters see them as courageous truth-tellers. Critics call them narcissists obsessed with controlling their narrative. Either way, they have become lightning rods in a world increasingly polarized and hungry for drama. And tonight, all those tensions have come crashing to the surface. A police call, an alleged fight, a prince rushed to a hospital. So if you're wondering how we arrived at the flashing blue lights and the tearful faces caught in secret photos, this is the road that led us here. A road paved with palace intrigue, tabloid warfare, love, rebellion, and wounds that have never fully healed. As we move forward into the events of this harrowing night, remember this. What we're witnessing isn't just the story of Harry and Meghan. It's the story of a couple trying to hold on to each other while the world refuses to look away. And tonight, the world is staring harder than ever. It's late evening in Montecito. The sky has settled into a dense black, pinpricked with stars, and the sea breeze carries the faint tang of salt and eucalyptus across quiet streets lined with multi-million-dollar estates. In the upscale neighborhood where Harry and Meghan live, silence is usually the rule, broken only by the gentle crunch of security vehicles making slow circuits past ivy-covered walls. But tonight, something is different. It begins as a faint disturbance, almost imperceptible. A neighbor, a woman who prefers not to be named, later tells reporters that she was standing in her kitchen rinsing dishes when she heard it. A thud, then raised voices. She paused, straining to hear through the hush. At first, she assumed it was a television echoing from a distant patio. But the voices continued, sharper now, punctuated by an unmistakable crash of glass. Within minutes, multiple 911 calls are logged. The dispatcher's notes read, possible domestic disturbance, raised voices, possible injury. At approximately 11:47 p.m., the first police vehicle rolls through the neighborhood gates. Its headlights sweep across palm trees and manicured lawns, splashing streaks of brightness onto thick stone walls. The car pulls up just short of the private driveway, leading to Harry and Meghan's property. Officers step out, scanning the area with the measured caution that comes from years of responding to high-profile calls where privacy and security collide. One officer radios in quietly, requesting backup. He knows whose house this is. The call might be routine, or it could erupt into an international incident. Meanwhile, inside the Sussex residence, chaos is unfolding. Accounts of what happens next diverge wildly, shaped by rumors, partial truths, and the frenzied imagination of those desperate to piece together the night's events. But several details remain consistent across multiple sources who've spoken under condition of anonymity. Harry and Meghan are in a heated argument. What sparks it remains unclear. Some say it's an ongoing discussion about business ventures. Others whisper it's about family issues still simmering in the background, perhaps triggered by recent media coverage. One rumor suggests a disagreement over how to handle upcoming press inquiries about their latest projects. Another claims Meghan confronted Harry over comments made in a recent interview with a UK outlet. But whatever the initial spark, voices rise. Security staff posted discreetly in various rooms exchange uneasy glances. According to one insider, Meghan is heard pleading in a trembling voice, "I can't do this anymore, Harry." Moments later, there's the unmistakable crash of a glass object shattering against a wall. A security staffer steps closer, unsure whether to intervene. That's a delicate balance in royal circles. Protect your principles, but never overstep into personal disputes unless absolutely necessary. Then the argument escalates. Harry's voice grows louder, then abruptly choked. A neighbor reports hearing a man yelling something indistinct, followed by a woman sobbing. At this point, the situation crosses an invisible line. A member of the couple's security team makes the fateful decision to dial 911. Police arrive at the gates around midnight. By then, Harry's condition has deteriorated. One security guard, described as visibly pale, rushes out to meet the officers. He's reportedly overheard saying he needs medical help. Minutes later, paramedics arrive. Their ambulance glides silently up the driveway under escort. Neighbors who peek through curtains see men in Navy uniforms carrying medical bags, moving quickly but cautiously. Security personnel attempt to block sight lines, holding up jackets or using SUVs as visual shields. Inside, paramedics find Harry seated in a hallway chair, his face pale, eyes unfocused. There's no visible blood, but he's reportedly trembling. One paramedic checks his pulse and oxygen levels. Meghan hovers nearby, mascara streaked across her cheeks, clutching a tissue in one hand. One medic gently asks Harry, "Sir, can you tell me what day it is?" Harry blinks, hesitates, and mutters an answer too softly to be heard. Meghan interjects, voice shaking, "He's had panic attacks before. He needs a minute." But the paramedics exchange glances that suggest they're unwilling to leave Harry at home. One makes the call, "We need to transport him." Harry is helped to his feet. Meghan attempts to follow, but a security officer advises her to stay back temporarily until they can secure the perimeter outside. Meghan protests but is eventually guided into a side room by a female security agent, reportedly in tears and repeatedly whispering, "I didn't want this to happen." By the time Harry is loaded into the ambulance, the neighborhood is no longer silent. News vans have begun to arrive. Freelance paparazzi speed down the road, cameras pointed out of car windows, lenses glittering in the glow of red and blue lights. And then come the flashes. Several photographers capture images of Harry being guided into the ambulance. He's partially shielded by paramedics and security staff, but one image in particular, never officially released but described in vivid detail, allegedly shows Harry leaning against a medic, eyes closed, looking utterly spent. The ambulance door shuts. Its siren stays silent as it pulls away from the estate. Police remain behind, speaking quietly with security staff. Officers canvass the perimeter, making sure no immediate threats exist. One neighbor, speaking anonymously, later tells a journalist, "I've never seen anything like it. The amount of police and security, it was like something out of a movie." Meanwhile, Meghan emerges onto the driveway. Paparazzi cameras click furiously as she shields her face, moving quickly toward a waiting vehicle. She appears visibly distraught. A voice from the crowd yells, "Meghan, is Harry okay?" But she doesn't respond, slipping into the backseat of an SUV that speeds away moments later. As the ambulance navigates darkened roads towards Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital, Harry reportedly speaks few words. Paramedics monitor his vitals, noting an elevated heart rate and rapid breathing. One medic gently asks if he's in physical pain. Harry reportedly shakes his head but says nothing further. At the hospital, security personnel immediately lock down an entire section of the emergency department. Hospital staff are briefed. A high-profile VIP is incoming. Nurses and doctors are told to avoid social media posts, and phones are restricted in certain areas to prevent leaks. Harry is wheeled inside, his face covered partially by a white hospital blanket. Medical staff begin assessments for physical trauma and potential psychological distress. Meanwhile, newsrooms across the world light up. Reporters hammer away at keyboards. Editors bark orders for updates every 5 minutes. Networks prepare breaking news graphics. The words "Royal Emergency" flash on television screens. And in Buckingham Palace, lights burn well into the early hours. Royal aides scramble to prepare statements. Senior advisors debate whether to issue a brief confirmation or remain silent. One insider later reveals that calls flew back and forth across the Atlantic all night. Prince Charles reportedly demanded updates every hour. Prince William, said to be deeply concerned, is briefed but makes no public comment. Across social media, theories explode. Some users post wild claims that Meghan attacked Harry. Others suggest Harry suffered a panic attack brought on by relentless media pressure. Still others accuse the entire incident of being staged to generate publicity. Yet one truth cuts through the noise. Harry is in the hospital, and nobody can say for sure how serious his condition might be. By 1:15 a.m., the hospital issues a statement declining to confirm any patient names but acknowledging that an unnamed male patient was admitted for observation following a medical incident. Outside, journalists crowd the hospital gates. Photographers crouch behind hedges, hoping to glimpse a royal figure through glass doors. Hospital staff leaving for the night dodge questions, refusing to speak. Meanwhile, Meghan reportedly arrives at the hospital just before 2 a.m. Her SUV pulls into a private entrance. Witnesses say she appears distressed but determined, flanked by security. She stays inside for several hours, leaving just before dawn without making any comment. By sunrise, news networks across Britain and the U.S. run with the same headlines: Prince Harry hospitalized after domestic incident. Police confirm presence at Montecito home. Photos leak showing Harry being taken away. And the royal family finds itself plunged into crisis once again. Tonight's incident raises a mountain of questions still unanswered. Was there physical violence, or was it purely emotional turmoil? Is Harry injured, or is this a mental health emergency? What triggered the fight? How is Meghan coping under the glare of renewed global scrutiny? And perhaps most crucially, will Harry and Meghan's relationship survive this latest storm, or has it reached the breaking point? In the hours that follow, sources close to the couple begin offering conflicting accounts. Some insist Harry collapsed due to exhaustion and emotional distress. Others hint at physical injury, though no credible evidence confirms that. One well-placed insider says, "This was a long time coming. The pressure has been unbearable. Tonight, it all just exploded." Meanwhile, law enforcement remains tight-lipped. Santa Barbara Sheriff's Department confirms officers responded to the property but refuses further detail, citing privacy laws and the sensitive nature of the individuals involved. All anyone knows for certain is that Harry spent the night under medical observation. Meghan returned home in the early morning hours, her face hidden behind oversized sunglasses, refusing to speak to reporters who chased her convoy back to Montecito. And somewhere inside the hospital, Harry, soldier, prince, father, husband, is left to reckon with a night that has torn open old wounds and added fresh scars. This is the night that has shaken the monarchy, reignited public fascination with the Sussexes, and raised profound questions about the price of living life under an unending spotlight. As we move forward, we'll examine the hospital scenes in greater detail. We'll listen to whispers from royal insiders, analyze police statements, and explore how this single midnight emergency might ripple through every corner of Harry and Meghan's future. Because if there's one thing tonight has proved, it's this: no matter how far you run, the past and the world's relentless gaze can. Inside Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital, the fluorescent lights glow with an almost clinical coldness, casting sterile reflections on polished floors and stainless steel fixtures. It's the middle of the night, but the emergency department hums with quiet urgency. Nurses move briskly between curtained bays. Monitors beep steadily. A distant intercom crackles with codes for incoming patients. Into this atmosphere rolls the silent ambulance carrying Prince Harry. As it arrives at the private entrance reserved for VIP patients and high-profile emergencies, hospital security is already in place, having been alerted moments earlier by Harry's security team and law enforcement. A guard waves the vehicle through, and the doors slide open to reveal Harry, slumped slightly, wrapped in a white hospital blanket. His eyes are half open, unfocused, and there's a faint pallor to his skin. One paramedic gently guides him down the ramp. Another carries an oxygen tank, though Harry is not on oxygen at this point. The nurse assigned to intake, a woman who, like every staff member tonight, has been briefed that a high-profile patient is inbound, greets the team with calm professionalism. She later tells a colleague, "He looked so vulnerable. You could see the weight of the world on his shoulders." Harry is wheeled swiftly through corridors lined with curious staff members trying not to stare. A few whisper among themselves as he passes. Word spreads quickly through the hospital: Prince Harry is here. The Sussex's security detail takes positions at every junction, ensuring no unauthorized staff approach. Hospital administrators have already locked down certain electronic medical record systems to restrict access. Only a small group of doctors and nurses are permitted to view Harry's chart. Cell phones are discouraged. The staff is warned. Any leak could trigger a media firestorm and severe consequences. Meanwhile, Harry is placed into a private treatment room. Monitors are connected. A nurse gently asks him a series of orientation questions: his name, date of birth, today's date. Harry answers, though slowly, his speech slightly slurred from exhaustion or stress. Meghan is not yet by his side. She's still en route from the Montecito property, caught in a rolling security convoy navigating camera flashes and traffic signals. Inside the hospital room, Harry's vital signs are taken. His blood pressure is elevated. His pulse races slightly above normal. One nurse asks if he's feeling any pain. Harry shakes his head but keeps his gaze fixed somewhere in the middle distance. Doctors conduct a preliminary neurological check to ensure there's no head trauma, given reports of Harry clutching his head earlier in the evening. They shine a pinlight into his pupils. Reflexes are tested. One doctor, speaking later on condition of anonymity, says it wasn't about physical injuries. He was in clear psychological distress. You could see the panic in his eyes. Meanwhile, outside the hospital, the situation is spinning out of control. News vans cluster near the emergency entrance, reporters speaking breathlessly into cameras. Police establish barricades to hold back photographers, who jostle for position hoping to capture any glimpse of Harry or Meghan. Hospital staff exiting the building are pounced on with questions. Is Prince Harry okay? Was he injured? Is Meghan there? Most staff rush past in silence, shaking their heads, refusing to confirm or deny anything. Inside, hospital administrators hold an emergency meeting. The discussion is tense. One official argues for a public statement to quell rumors. Another insists silence is safer, fearing legal consequences and breaches of privacy laws. Ultimately, they decide on a generic statement confirming that an adult male patient is receiving medical care, without names or details. Meanwhile, Harry's security team coordinates with hospital personnel. They demand privacy curtains be erected around Harry's room in the adjacent hallway. They install additional security cameras. A hospital staffer later quips, "It was like the Secret Service had taken over our floor." At approximately 1:30 a.m., Meghan arrives. Her SUV pulls into the private entrance. Security shields her from the press, ushering her through staff-only corridors. A nurse who glimpses her in the hallway later describes her as looking devastated, like she'd been crying nonstop. When Meghan enters Harry's room, there's a hush. Harry looks up, eyes glassy. Meghan hurries to his side, takes his hand, and leans close. Witnesses describe the scene as heartbreakingly intimate. Meghan speaks softly, trying to calm him. Harry murmurs something indistinct. Doctors explain the situation to Meghan in low tones. There's no sign of serious physical trauma, but they're concerned about Harry's mental state. They recommend keeping him for observation for several more hours to ensure he's stable. Meghan nods, though her face betrays the strain. She steps outside the room to make several hushed phone calls. It's unclear whether she's speaking with family, legal advisors, or public relations staff. Meanwhile, in the hospital corridor, tensions rise. Security has barred entry to journalists trying to slip past checkpoints. At least one reporter is caught attempting to blend in wearing a medical scrub top and carrying a fake clipboard. He's escorted out by security. Hospital administrators tighten access further, authorizing only essential medical staff onto the floor. Back inside the treatment room, Harry begins to speak more clearly. One doctor gently broaches the subject of stress and anxiety. Harry listens, nodding slowly, though he avoids eye contact. A nurse suggests that he try deep breathing exercises. Harry closes his eyes and complies, though shakily. One physician later says it was clear he was on the edge. This wasn't just stress from one argument. It was years of accumulated pressure exploding all at once. By 2:45 a.m., Harry's vitals have stabilized somewhat. A nurse offers him water, which he accepts with trembling hands. Meghan returns to his side, and the two speak in low voices. Security outside the door ensures no one can overhear the conversation. Meanwhile, news continues to break around the world. Networks cut into programming with special reports. Social media is ablaze with hashtags. Hashtag Harry Hospitalized. Hashtag Royal Crisis. Hashtag Montecito Midnight. Speculation rages. Some insist Harry's episode was purely medical. Others claim it's the result of emotional trauma. Online arguments flare over Meghan's role in the incident. Comment threads balloon into hundreds of thousands of posts within hours. At around 3:15 a.m., a hospital psychiatrist arrives. He introduces himself gently, explaining he's there to check on Harry's mental well-being. Harry initially resists speaking, but after a few minutes, he begins to open up. He reportedly says, "I'm so tired. It's like I can't escape any of it." The psychiatrist listens without interruption, occasionally taking notes. Meghan sits silently beside Harry, occasionally squeezing his hand. Medical staff later confirmed that while Harry doesn't appear to be physically harmed, his psychological distress is significant. They recommend a short inpatient observation, partly for his safety and partly to avoid media chaos if he's discharged too quickly. By dawn, Meghan is seen stepping out into the corridor, speaking with Harry's security team. Her voice trembles as she says, "I can't believe this is happening again." In the waiting area, several hospital employees quietly watch news updates on their phones. One whispers, "This is Diana all over again," referring to the relentless press scrutiny that once drove Harry's mother into hiding and ultimately to her tragic end. As the first rays of sunlight filter through the hospital's eastern windows, the staff begins switching shifts. Nurses brief their replacements in hurried whispers. Harry remains in his private room, guarded by security, still under observation. Meghan sits at his side, leaning forward in a posture of exhaustion and worry. At 6:30 a.m., hospital administrators release a carefully worded statement to the media. A male patient is being evaluated for non-life-threatening medical concerns. The hospital will not be providing additional information due to patient privacy. Outside, reporters keep vigil, hoping for any glimpse of Harry, Meghan, or a royal envoy arriving with updates from Buckingham Palace. A rumor briefly sweeps through the crowd that Prince Charles has called the hospital personally. Another rumor claims William has offered to fly to California. None of these reports are confirmed. Inside, Harry's medical team discusses possible next steps. There's no physical injury requiring further treatment, but concerns remain about his mental health and the pressures he's under. Doctors urge caution. They advise Harry's security staff to avoid exposing him to the media frenzy outside until he's emotionally stable enough to handle it. Meghan is informed of these recommendations. She quietly agrees, though her eyes brim with fresh tears. Throughout the hospital, whispers echo. Staff marvel at how quickly an ordinary night turned into a royal crisis. One nurse confides to a colleague, "I never thought I'd be treating a prince. And I never thought I'd see one look so broken." Meanwhile, Harry seems to drift in and out of moments of clarity. He speaks haltingly about wanting to protect his children, about the burden of public life. He whispers at one point, "I just wanted to stop." Meghan holds his hand, wiping her eyes. By mid-morning, discussions begin about possible discharge. Harry's vitals remain stable, and doctors believe he'd recover better away from the hospital's glaring lights and the swelling crowd outside. But security teams insist on keeping him inside until they can arrange a secure exit. Meghan steps out again around 9:15 a.m. She wears a baseball cap and sunglasses, attempting to avoid recognition as she confers with advisors. Reporters shout questions at her as she leaves through a side door, but she remains silent, escorted into a waiting SUV. Within hours, news outlets around the world report that Harry is expected to leave the hospital soon but remains under medical observation. Buckingham Palace releases a terse statement. The Duke of Sussex is receiving medical care and appreciates the concern expressed by the public. No further comment will be made at this time. But no statement can quell the storm brewing outside the hospital's walls. By noon, Harry remains inside, resting. Meghan has returned to the hospital and stays with him quietly, away from cameras. Security continues to patrol every hallway. Staff avoid even glancing into Harry's room unless they're directly assigned to his care. It's been a long, harrowing night. A night that began with flashing lights and a fight behind palace gates has ended in sterile hospital corridors, where a man once born into unimaginable privilege sits quietly, trying to hold himself together. As this chapter closes, one truth has become painfully clear. Fame cannot shield anyone from human vulnerability, and even the walls of a hospital can't keep out the weight of the world. Harry is not merely a prince tonight. He's a patient, a husband, a man wrestling demons no palace, no crown, no title can keep at bay. And as the hospital prepares for his eventual release, the question remains, what comes next for Harry and Meghan? Because nothing about their story, from the beginning to this moment, has ever followed the rules. And tonight, every rule has been shattered once again. Outside Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital, the sun rises into a pale sky streaked with gold and lavender, casting soft light across a scene of organized chaos. The morning air buzzes with tension as reporters huddle behind metal barricades, microphones poised, cameras trained on every possible exit. Security guards patrol the sidewalks, their expressions unreadable. Drivers idle in vans emblazoned with network logos. A single question drives the frenzy. What really happened last night? By 7:30 a.m., the Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Department is under siege from media requests. Journalists jam phone lines, demanding official statements. Editors back in New York, London, and Sydney bark orders down phone connections, insisting on updates every 10 minutes. The royal family's press office has released a curt statement, but it's vague and leaves far more questions than answers. People want facts. But for now, facts are in short supply. At 8:00 a.m. sharp, the Sheriff's Department finally issues a written statement. It reads, "On the evening of date, deputies responded to a disturbance call in the Montecito area. Upon arrival, they ensured the safety of the individuals involved. One individual was transported for medical evaluation. No arrests were made, and there is no active investigation at this time. No further details will be provided due to privacy considerations." It's a statement designed to calm the situation, and it accomplishes precisely the opposite. Reporters begin firing off questions at the sheriff's press liaison, who stands grim-faced behind a podium. The first questions come rapid-fire. Was there physical violence involved? Were weapons found in the residence? Was Meghan Markle injured? Is Prince Harry facing any charges? The spokesperson repeats variations of the same phrase. "I can't confirm or deny specifics due to privacy laws and the sensitivity of this matter." That's not good enough for a press corps ravenous for details. Within minutes, new headlines are flooding news sites and social media, each more breathless than the last. Police respond to domestic incident at Harry and Meghan's home. Prince Harry hospitalized after fight, police refuse to comment. No charges filed yet in royal disturbance. And then, while reporters are still crowding the Sheriff's Department steps, the situation takes an explosive turn. At approximately 9:15 a.m., an anonymous tipster sends several major media outlets a handful of photographs allegedly taken during Harry's removal from the Montecito property. The email is short and ominous. "You want proof? Here's what your royals look like behind closed doors." Within minutes, editors and producers scramble to verify the images. But even a cursory look leaves no doubt. These photos are genuine. Photo 1 shows Harry being helped down a stone walkway, flanked by paramedics. His shoulders are slumped, and his hand covers part of his face as though trying to block the camera's view. Photo 2 captures Meghan standing in the doorway of the couple's Montecito mansion. Her eyes are swollen, her mouth parted as if mid-play. One hand is raised toward the camera, palm out, a universal signal of stop. Photo 3 is perhaps the most startling. Harry is seated on a bench near the driveway, head bowed between his knees. A medic crouches beside him, holding Harry's wrist as though checking his pulse. In the background, Meghan is blurred but visibly weeping, clutching what looks like a shattered piece of glass wrapped in a napkin. Even without audio, the images convey an undeniable sense of crisis. Within an hour, snippets of the photos begin appearing online. Major networks hesitate to broadcast them outright due to privacy concerns, but smaller outlets and social media pages face no such reservations. By mid-morning, millions of people have seen at least partial glimpses of Harry and Meghan during their most vulnerable moments. Reaction is immediate and ferocious. Some commentators express sympathy, noting how terrifying it must be for any couple to have a private crisis exposed to the world. Others pounce, dissecting Meghan's expression, speculating wildly about the broken glass, or suggesting sinister explanations. Conspiracy theories explode across platforms like X and TikTok. Did Meghan physically attack Harry? Was Harry injured during a struggle? Was the glass object a weapon, or simply a vase accidentally smashed during an argument? And looming over everything is the question of who leaked the photographs. Law enforcement officials admit privately that the images appear to be genuine, captured by someone stationed outside the property during the incident. But no one knows precisely who took them. Theories abound. Some suggest a paparazzo managed to sneak close enough to photograph the scene before being detected. Others whisper that the leak came from inside Harry and Meghan's own security team, a betrayal unimaginable yet not unprecedented in the world of celebrity protection. One security consultant, speaking to a major news network, says, "It's incredibly difficult to completely lock down a scene like that, especially when it spills into public view. If these photos came from a staff member or security personnel, that's catastrophic for Harry and Meghan. It means they can't trust the people closest to them." Meanwhile, privacy advocates decry the publication of the photos as a gross violation. One prominent legal expert notes that California's privacy laws are among the strictest in the country and lawsuits could be imminent. But the genie is out of the bottle. As the morning unfolds, TV commentators bring in body language experts to analyze Meghan's posture in the doorway, Harry's bowed head, and the medic's anxious expression. Psychologists weigh in on what the images might reveal about marital strife, emotional breakdowns, or signs of trauma. All of this happens in real time as Harry remains hospitalized under observation and Meghan shuttles back and forth between the hospital and home, shielded by a security detail determined to prevent further leaks. At 11:30 a.m., the Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Department releases a second, more forceful statement. The spokesperson steps up to the podium and reads, "We are aware of photographs circulating online depicting portions of a medical response at a private residence. These photographs were not released by law enforcement. We consider the publication of these images to be an invasion of privacy. At this time, there is no criminal investigation into the individuals involved in the incident itself. We are, however, investigating the unauthorized capture and distribution of these images." A reporter shouts, "So you're saying Harry and Meghan aren't under investigation for domestic violence?" The spokesperson replies firmly, "Correct. There are no criminal charges, and no investigation is pending into the conduct of Mr. or Mrs. Sussex." That clarification momentarily calms the narrative, but only momentarily, because the damage is done. In London, tabloids run screaming headlines, "Midnight Royal Row, inside Harry and Meghan's explosive fight." In the US, talk shows debate whether the couple can survive another public meltdown. And while some pundits express compassion, others gleefully declare that the photos prove Harry and Meghan's marriage is unraveling. One British tabloid columnist writes, "The Sussexes have always claimed they wanted privacy. And yet here we are, staring at photos of them mid-crisis. Perhaps this is the inevitable end of a couple who made their brand all about airing royal laundry." Meanwhile, royal experts try to separate fact from speculation. One historian argues that even the suggestion of domestic violence could have long-lasting implications for Harry's public image, regardless of the police clearing him of any criminal behavior. "This is how royal narratives are shaped," she says on air. "A single photograph, even stripped of context, can become a symbol that sticks forever in the public mind. Whether true or not, the image of Harry looking broken, Meghan crying, and police on the scene is now part of the royal story." By early afternoon, law firms in California confirmed that Harry and Meghan's legal team has begun sending cease and desist letters to outlets publishing the leaked photos. They threaten litigation for invasion of privacy and emotional distress. Yet legal experts caution that the damage may already be irreversible. One entertainment lawyer explains, "Even if they win in court, these images are out there. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube." Meanwhile, inside the hospital, Harry remains under observation. Medical staff continue psychological evaluations, mindful that his mental state remains fragile. Meghan spends stretches of time sitting silently at his bedside, fingers entwined with his. Hospital staff describe her as polite, but visibly exhausted, her eyes red from crying. At one point, Harry is overheard telling a nurse, "I can't keep living like this. Every time I think it's quiet, it starts again." The nurse replies gently, "Sometimes the hardest storms pass quicker than you think." Outside, the media hurricane shows no sign of passing. By 3 p.m., several social media accounts claim to possess additional unreleased photos and even video footage from the night. The Sussexes' legal team issues stern warnings. But that only seems to fuel the feeding frenzy further. A royal biographer appears on television, shaking his head gravely. "I've covered royal scandals for 40 years. This one feels different." This is a collision between modern celebrity culture and the ancient traditions of monarchy, and it's happening in real time, on social media, with devastating consequences. And even as speculation rages, more details begin leaking about the police response itself. One police source, speaking anonymously, reveals that the initial 911 call described a loud domestic disturbance with possible injury. However, by the time officers arrived, there were no visible injuries requiring criminal charges. The officers reportedly found both Harry and Meghan emotional but cooperative. A second police source claims that Harry appeared dazed and extremely distressed, prompting paramedics to recommend hospital evaluation as a precaution. Both sources confirm no signs of physical assault were documented. "This was a mental health crisis, not a crime scene," one says bluntly. Yet, none of that stops the internet from weaving its own narratives. In the days to come, these leaked photos will dominate coverage of Harry and Meghan. Media outlets will analyze them from every angle. Opinion pieces will debate whether the couple deserves privacy or whether their public roles justify the scrutiny. and Harry and Meghan will face the agonizing challenge of moving forward under yet another layer of public judgment. As the sun sets on the day after the incident, the world remains transfixed. Because this isn't just a story about one night in Montecito. It's about fame, trauma, love, and the price of living a life that millions feel entitled to watch unfold. And those photos, whether blurred or crystal clear, are now burned into the public's collective memory, symbols of a royal couple caught at the sharpest edge of the world's fascination and fury. By the time the sun has risen twice over Montecito since Harry's emergency hospital visit, the world has been plunged into an emotional and intellectual tug-of-war. Beyond the flashing cameras and screaming tabloid headlines, a more measured chorus has begun to speak up. These are the voices of historians, psychologists, royal biographers, and cultural commentators, each offering insights into how this explosive incident fits into the broader saga of Harry and Meghan and the ancient institution they can never fully escape. Their commentary is not merely background noise. It shapes public perception. It's the difference between Harry being seen as a victim of mental health struggles or as a troubled man unable to handle the pressures he willingly courted. It's the difference between Meghan being viewed as a supportive partner or as a woman whose presence has allegedly fractured a once solid royal foundation. And right now, these experts are stepping forward in droves to dissect every facet of what happened. One of the first voices to weigh in is Dr. Judith Collier, a well-known royal historian and professor at King's College London. She appears on an early morning British news program, her demeanor calm, her speech precise. This incident, Dr. Collier says, cannot be viewed in isolation. It's a culmination of long-standing tensions between Harry and the royal institution, tensions rooted in trauma, personal freedom, and generational change. The royal family is designed to project an image of perfect composure. When cracks appear, as they did with Diana and now with Harry and Meghan, the public is both scandalized and fascinated. They want to know, is the monarchy still stable? She goes on to describe how Harry's upbringing was defined by contradictions, raised for duty, yet haunted by the brutal death of his mother, who tried to carve her own identity outside royal constraints. Harry is, in many ways, Diana's son, Dr. Collier continues. He inherited her deep mistrust of the press, her emotional vulnerability, and her yearning for a life that felt real and authentic. Yet he is bound by his royal blood. This creates an inner conflict that becomes unsustainable under stress. What we saw the other night was, perhaps, that conflict finally erupting. Another expert, Dr. Samir Patel, a clinical psychologist specializing in trauma and high-profile clients, provides crucial insight into the mental health dimensions of the incident. Speaking with a major American network, he's careful not to diagnose Harry from afar but offers context for the public to understand the possible psychological factors at play. Imagine growing up under intense public scrutiny from the age of 0, Dr. Patel says. Every smile, every frown, every misstep documented for global consumption. Then add the trauma of losing your mother in a highly publicized tragedy and the press being directly involved in her death. It's not just grief. It's complex trauma, deeply embedded. For Harry, this makes certain triggers particularly powerful, including loud arguments, media intrusion, and any threat to his sense of safety. He pauses, then continues. When someone with that background experiences a major conflict, like the one reportedly happening in the house that night, their brain can essentially go into survival mode. We call it hyperarousal. Heart races, adrenaline surges, thoughts become scattered. Even if no physical harm occurs, the emotional toll can be enormous. That's why we see paramedics advising hospital evaluation, not because of visible wounds but because of the psychological risk. Meanwhile, royal biographers provide another perspective. Nigel Forster, author of several books chronicling the House of Windsor, tells a BBC interviewer that the incident confirms what he's long believed, that Harry's attempt to live outside the royal system while remaining a public figure was always going to be unsustainable. Harry wants the public's attention on his terms, Forster says. He wants to control the narrative. But royal fame doesn't work that way. Once you step into the spotlight, you can't switch it off just because you're having a bad day. The public feels entitled to know everything, including your most private moments. Forster insists that Harry and Meghan's choices have placed them on a perpetual collision course with the press. They've monetized their royal identities through books, interviews, and documentaries. Whether fair or not, the public feels they owe transparency in return. That's why this incident is exploding. People feel they have a right to see behind the curtain, even if that means watching two people in their most vulnerable moment. However, not all experts agree with this cynical view. Professor Lena Chong, a sociologist who studies celebrity culture and public trauma, offers a different interpretation during an interview on NPR. We should be extremely cautious before assuming Harry and Meghan wanted this attention. There's a difference between controlling your narrative through interviews and having your private breakdown plastered across social media. It's entirely possible to want to tell your own story while desperately wishing to protect certain boundaries. What happened here is a gross invasion of privacy. Chong explains how the internet amplifies every rumor and fuels toxic speculation. What's happening to Harry and Meghan is the result of a 24/7 digital news cycle that thrives on scandal. People feel ownership over these public figures, as though Harry and Meghan exist purely for their entertainment. It's deeply dehumanizing. Meanwhile, legal experts weigh in on the implications of the leaked photographs. Sandra Lopez, a California-based privacy attorney, appears on a legal analysis program to explain Harry and Meghan's options. California has some of the strongest privacy laws in the country, Lopez says. If those photographs were taken without consent on private property, Harry and Meghan could have a significant case for intrusion upon seclusion. But the challenge is that once the images are out, you can't unsee them. They'll circulate forever online. Lawsuits might deter future invasions, but the damage here is already partly done. She adds, the royal brand relies heavily on controlled imagery. Leaks like this don't just affect Harry and Meghan personally. They ripple outward, potentially affecting their business partnerships, media deals, and public image. Sponsors and partners might hesitate to be associated with a brand perceived as volatile. At the same time, cultural commentators begin dissecting what this crisis means for broader conversations about mental health. Dr. Emily Parks, a mental health advocate and author, uses a popular podcast to urge compassion. People need to remember that Harry has been extremely open about his struggles. He's spoken about panic attacks, therapy, PTSD from his mother's death.